This video is going to cover Worksession files in Rhino, and this is the way that we're going to collaborate in the first half of the semester, maybe the first third of the semester for your project. And Worksession files are a little bit different than collaborating in Revit, but they're fairly straightforward. They are fairly limited, but it's really good for this class because it actually limits, your ability to access other people's files, but you can still load in other people's files. So there is a little bit of theory that I have to explain here so that when you're setting this up, you just have to set it up once and you have to make sure you're saving the files in the right location. So I have a graph here which I'll share with everybody. And essentially there are three group members here. There's group member A, group member B, group member C. And you each have a file, right? You can theoretically name that whatever you want, but because we're breaking up the project into three parts, three architectural parts, this will probably be the podium, this will be the tower, and this will be the crown and the sort of subterranean elements. All of these files, including the site file, are actually hosted in the cloud. Now we're going to create a Z Drive collaborative folder for you on the UTexas VPN. So if you do utilize the Z Drive, there are actually other methods that you can utilize, for instance Google File Stream or Box Cloud Stream. But if you do utilize the Z Drive method, just note that you're going to have to connect to the VPN before every class to be able to access these files. So let's say I'm group member A here. I'm going to create a file called File A or Podium or whatever. I'm going to save it to that collaborative folder. Now, all of your group members have access to this folder, but you're going to create a new folder on your own computer, and it's going to be saved as a Worksession file. Now, I'm going to show you how to set this up, but that Worksession file is going to be saved on your computer. That Worksession file does not contain any geometric data. It's essentially a spreadsheet which is telling your computer which files to link to. Now on the Worksession there's an active file and there are non-active files. The active file, you can only have one active file at a time, and if somebody else has a file that's active, you can't have that file as your active file. And that's a safeguard so that you can't save over other people's work, or that you can't edit the same thing at the same time. The computer doesn't know what to do. So each person, group member A, group member B, group member C, will be responsible for their active file in their Worksession. Now in that Worksession, you're also going to link your other group members' files. So file A, file B, and file C will be in Worksession C, but the active file in Worksession C will be file C. Each of these Worksessions, you're also going to link the site file. And this will allow you to not have the same data pasted over and over. If the site is in its own file, you just link it in, and if somebody needs to edit the site, they can make that the active file temporarily, and then they can go back and they can edit their own site later. Now I'll show you how to do this in Rhino. Let's say I'm working on the podium. Now I've saved a file here as podium. I have a couple layers here. Now I'm going to run the Worksession command. I don't have any geometry currently in this file. I'll go over the path here later because this will be changed to the Z Drive, but I don't have access to that currently while I'm recording this tutorial. So there'll be a separate, probably 1-minute video to show you how to access that. And when you run the Worksession command, you're going to run attach. And this is where we're going to attach the other files. So this is currently just a file, on my own computer, but this would actually be on the Z Drive here, and these would be all of your group members' other files. So I'm going to link in the crown, and let's just open that file. Now there's nothing in that file, but you can see that that is locked because I actually currently have it in use. So I can't actually open this, right? Because this file is currently on use on my own computer. Even if that was another person's computer, I couldn't set this as the active file. Now let's go ahead and attach another file here, and let's do the site file. This file actually has geometry in it, and you can see it's not currently in use, either locally or remotely. So that means I can actually switch to it. If I click it, I can make it the active file. Let's go ahead and close this and take a look at the layers. So Podium and Layer 1 were both layers that I had in the Podium file. So if I'm group member A, I'm working on the Podium. These are my own layers. I can manipulate them, I can change the materials, I can delete them, etc. But for the crown, you can see there's only one layer there. And for the site, there's a bunch of layers. But I can't actually delete these. I can't manipulate them. And actually, if I unlock, let's say, the near site, and I select something that's part of the geometry, I can't even move it. I can copy it, so you can copy geometry over, and now it's in your own file. You can see this is on layer 1. And this is a safeguard, so this is saying that this is in its own file. I don't want anybody to edit this, and but I do want to be able to see it. I want to be able to somewhat interact with it, and that's how we're going to collaborate this semester. So let's say I go ahead and draw a box here. I'm currently in the Podium file. Right, and I'll put this on the Podium layer. I'm going to go ahead and turn the far side off here so you can see a little bit better what I'm dealing with. So I'm going to go ahead and save this file, and this will save to your Z drive or to a remote location, so ignore that C for a second. Now I'm going to go to the crown file to show you how another group member would take a look at this. I'm going to run another work session. You can see that I don't have any files here because if I'm another member of the group. I haven't gone through these steps. I'm going to attach let's attach the site first. You can see the same thing happens. Same thing here. Let's actually close this. And I can turn off the far site, right? But that Podium is not there, and that's because I haven't linked it yet. So I'm going to go ahead and attach the Podium file, and you can see that that pops up. So it's as simple as that, and the only thing you have to keep in mind with Z drives is that there is a little bit of network lag. So whenever you save, you might have to wait 30 seconds to a minute to be able to see somebody else's work, and it's not real-time editing. So if I don't save the file, that person is not going to see that as an update. So let's go ahead and add something here. Let's add another box, and this is let's say this is the crown, right? It would be up here, something like that, just a floating box. Let's go ahead and save this file, and let's go back to the Podium. So now if I run the Worksession command, you can see that the status pops up that there's an update available. So I'm going to click it and go to update. And then you can see that that geometry populates. Now again, I can't actually move it because this is not geometry that I own, and that's what we want. We want whoever's working on the crown to work on the crown. And that's essentially it. Whenever you make an update that you want your group members to see, you just go ahead and save your file. Now, the last sort of logical leap we have to go over here is where to actually save the Worksession file, because you can see when I run the Worksession command, it says Untitled, right? That is the title of the actual Worksession. And this, which lists all of the sort of paths, all of the files, is the actual Worksession itself. If we go back to that spreadsheet, it's this, right? It's what we're linking files into. And this is the actual file we're editing. So I'm going to go back to the Podium here, and I'm going to save this Worksession. Now this is what you need to save to your actual computer, and you can see that the type is a little bit different here. It's in .rws. So I'm just going to save it to the desktop, and I'm going to call it, let's do it high-rise Worksession Podium, just so I know that, that's my role in the group. I'm going to go ahead and close here. I'm going to save this, and this is the Podium file. I'm actually going to exit out. Now when I want to edit this file, I don't actually want to go to the cloud and edit that file. I want to open up the Worksession file so that I already have all of that stuff linked. So what you need to do is this needs to be saved to your computer, and whenever you want to collaborate, whenever you want to work on this file, you need to open up that Worksession file. You can see it might take a second here. And what it does is it takes a second to process all the geometry, And I still have that spring, the site file attached, and I have the crown attached, right? But now I can go ahead and edit this geometry. And when I run the Worksession file again, you can see that the status is active here for the actual podium. So the Worksession file is saving just this sort of spreadsheet info. It's not saving any of the geometric info. And that's essentially it for Worksession files. Just keep in mind this example only had 2 files. It had the crown and the podium. Between it will be the tower as well. Now this is where you're going to have to collaborate, right? Nobody should really be editing the site file. The site file, you can turn layers on and off. Let's just turn off the near site, right? And if you have to work underground, let's just go ahead and turn the ground off. So that's how you would work, right? And in the end, you can always go into the site file and make sure there's no overlapping geometry, so that when you're exporting this and bringing it into Revit, before spring break, then you won't have any overlapping geometries. You'll have a really clean file. The last thing I'll say is that if I draw a box up here and I'm in the Podium file, for instance, or group member A file, whatever you want to call it, let's just draw anything and let's move it over here. Right? I can't run like a Boolean difference from this to this, because this will actually, I mean you can, but the thing is this is actually a copied geometry. So you can't edit other people's geometry. This is very similar, if you've ever collaborated in Revit, to worksheets. So it's essentially, or work sets, right? You have to ask for permission to edit that thing, and that will be another thing down the road. But just keep in mind, if you ever want to copy this stuff, this is where you're going to really have to talk to your group member and say, well, I have some geometry that I think we should push this up. Well, that person's going to have to edit the geometry. Now, if that person is not working on the file, you have to trust that they're not going to go into that file and edit it, right? Because this is a publicly located, well, not publicly, it's a remotely located folder. So if you do want to edit the crown, and the group member who's responsible for the crown is not currently editing it, you will see that this is unlocked, just like the site file is unlocked. I could actually go into the site file, I could manipulate things, and then I could go back to my file. And I would do that by making this the active file. Now that's essentially going to start a new work session, and it's going to ask you to save that work session as a different thing, because the work session basically wants you to have a single active file, and then it just wants info of like, what are we linking into this file, right? Who are we collaborating with? And whenever you change that, it thinks that you're creating a new sort of session, right? So just keep that in mind, and we'll probably do a live demo of this, and I'll hand out this this diagram as well. Now, whenever you want to end your sort of modeling session, or you need to save and go to another class or whatever, you're going to have to take care of 2 files. So you're going to need to save the regular file. Whenever you run the save command or save as command, even with a work session running, and if you open a work session, you're saving the actual file. You're saving the geometry, right? You're saving this. But you also need to save the work session. Now, if you didn't change your file, it might not ask you to change anything. So let me just copy this up. I haven't saved this. I'm going to hit X. I'm just going to quit out of the program, right? It's going to ask me for saving changes to the Podium file. And I'm going to say yes. And then it's going to prompt me again. It's going to say, do I want to save the work session changes? And most of the time, you're going to want to say yes. Now, if you say no, it actually doesn't really matter in terms of geometry. You're not going to lose that geometry because you saved the actual file. But I'm going to click yes here, and now when I open this up again, we should be all good to go with those 2 blocks. You can see it's processing here, what layers are on, what layers are off, what am I collaborating with, and that's essentially it. Just keep in mind you're going to have to save a couple different files, but don't get overwhelmed by that. One is just the local file, which again lists all of the files that you're linking into, and one is the actual geometry, which is hosted to the cloud.